When I started this project, I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to do, my step-by-step process. Little did I know how much that would change. We start off real easy, disassembling the model so that I can get paint into all the little nooks and crannies. You know we gotta do that Rhinox hide base coat. I always thin my paints outside of the airbrush before putting it in there. This reduces clogging, and I'm just using regular water to thin these out. We're going to go ahead and avoid the white paint from the Zenithal here, so that when I go over this with my next color, it'll show up a little bit better. Next up is Death Guard Green. It really does a good job of selling that icky green color that we love so much in Death Guard. Then we're just gonna, really easy, follow our Zenithal pattern here, making sure that some of the Rhinox hide still shows up on the edges. This is my typical workflow for Death Guard, my entire army, and it's a really easy way to get a 3-color minimum standard for your army. Here's where things get a little bit different. Usually I use Ogre and Camo for a final highlight, but I thought here, how about I try to use the same technique that you would get for a marble pattern, but put it onto the actual color itself for a model. This is a really good opportunity to try a new technique. And because this is a vehicle, we can have these larger areas where this sort of pattern can show up on. It's a very easy technique to do. You just dry out a wet wipe or a baby wipe. This is a Lysol wipe. You stretch it out like you see me doing here, and then once you spray through that, it will leave a wispy pattern on your model. This is usually used to make a marble effect for bases and things like that, but I thought we'd try something different. And as you can see, it's a pretty subtle effect. An alternate way of doing that would be to use a darker color, maybe go back to that Rhinox hide and then use that over your green. I think that would look pretty cool. And here I am deviating from my normal plan again. Usually I would just use a metallic color like Warplock Bronze, but for some reason I got it into my head that I could just non-metallic metal some rust. This is something that I've wanted to practice for a while. We're just doing a cool base layer of Rhinox hide, and then we're going to build up those additional colors starting with Doombow Brown. It's a pretty slow process. I've thinned out my paints quite a bit. I'm just going through layer by layer building up that color. I'm going to also do the barrels of these guns. Yeah, you definitely don't have to do this. This is just an extra step that I really wanted to practice. I wanted to get this technique down. I have another model that I'm ready to paint, and I really wanted to be able to put some convincing rust on him. Then I went ahead and did another thing that I don't usually do, and I started mixing my own custom colors. I usually just like to use the color the way it is out of the pot or out of the dropper bottle. That way I don't have to fuss around and try and do some guesswork when I'm trying to color match that later on. And with rust, you can have smooth blends, or you can do kind of a scratchy highlight like you see here. It can look pretty crunchy, but still be very, very convincing. And I also try to drag a lot of streaks running down so that it looks like rust is leaking down from every crack and crevice of the entire model. My final highlight color for this is Jacaro Orange. You could certainly add a lot more colors to get a lot more depth and visual interest, but this is just a fairly simple and easy non-metallic rust color scheme. And then we're just completely going off the rails from my plan. I'm going to try and use some pigment powder here to kind of blend all the colors together. I've never done this before, but it also kind of helped to bring a lot more of a rust orange color to the entire surface and kind of blend everything together, make it one cohesive kind of section of armor. I take my time here. There's a lot of trim. There's a lot of metal on here that needs this technique done to it. There's no hurry, and patience is everything. The more time you put into it, the better it will look every time. And here you can see my patience and my hard work have paid off to make this rust really pop. And I'm discovering that the more I'm handling the model, the more paint I'm actually rubbing off. So I'm going to do a mid-project varnish here. AK Ultra Matte all the way. I use this on everything. I move on to the horns, and I'm really excited to show you my special technique and my little trick for making these things pop and look fantastic every time. We do a white base coat or an off-white color, and then a very thin down brown. I'm using Mournfang brown. Actually, when I run out of a paint, I just add water to it and then mix it all up. And that makes it perfect for doing glazes or really thin layered colors. We don't have to make it perfect. We don't have to worry about things like little coffee stains, because my next trick, Seraphim Sepia here, we're gonna put this over the entire surface. This both darkens that brown color a little bit and shades the white base coat, and really does a good job of hiding any little mistakes and blends them right together. It's beautiful. This guy's got a lot of horns, a lot of teeth, so I get to work and just hammer these things out all at the same time. I'm going to avoid the teeth in the mouth for now, because I'm going to paint those gums a very dark color, and it'll be a lot easier if I get white paint on a dark color versus the dark color on the white paint for the teeth. So we're going to save the teeth for the very last. We're just going to repeat the process every step. White base coat, blend in the Mournfang brown, and then put Seraphim Sepia over top of it. Next up, I'm going to take Fulgrim Pink and Rakarth Flesh, mix them together, and I'm going to put scratchy highlights over a purple base coat for this flesh that I totally did not forget to film. Sorry. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and thin that down and start to blend that highlight color into the purple. Just really thin layers, glazing. I spent so long on this, just going back and forth and smoothing these out. Eventually, I got frustrated and I used the airbrush, but I smoothed out those highlights and gave it a nice fleshy consistency. I'm not gonna lie, this skin is something that I battled with for a really long time. I'm adding more pink to it. I revisit it every now and then because I just don't feel like it's exactly where I want it. I kind of want it to be this bruised, fleshy, irritated skin, and at every point I just felt like I could just make it a little bit ickier. I take a break, I move on to the next step because this will help me kind of clear my head a little bit. We get some dark purple onto those gums, and then I'm glazing in some pinkish red color to kind of give them a nice fleshy, nasty consistency. If at any point you look at this and you go, oh, that looks gross, then I've done my job. Up next is a part of the video that I thought about cutting out. It's a big mistake. This purple does not work on the tongue. The pink highlight, it just doesn't play. I end up going with a darker color, just like the gums. This contrast paint is absolutely horrible. It doesn't go on very well. It highlights the little mistakes that I made in my sculpting process. I just completely go over all of that. But I think that it's important to kind of show that, yes, mistakes do happen, even for people who are painting at a higher level. Not saying that I am, but they're not things that completely ruin the model. You certainly don't have to strip it. You just go ahead and paint over top of it. Just give it another try. Keep trying. Really, the secret to this whole miniature painting thing is just going over the same area dozens of times until it finally looks better, even if you have to take a break and move on to another section of the model. We're following the same process with the teeth as we did with all the other horns. Really easy stuff. Off-white base coat, Mournfang brown shade. I like to paint my little bugs this ethereal sort of antifreeze colored green. And after taking some time to clear my head and think about what I really wanted to do with this skin, I decided to go back through with the airbrush with a purplish pink color. I think that really went a long way to introduce some more color and some more irritated, fleshy colors. We're almost there. We just add some extra details to some little trim. I wanted to introduce some yellows in here. It was kind of getting all samey for the color choices here with greens and purples. We do a very small amount of edge highlighting. This model doesn't really need that much, especially not with all the fleshy bits and the mods that I made. We go ahead and paint in the lenses with a white. Then we're going to hit that with an airbrush to make an easy glowing effect that we go back over with a red. Cool thing about this is you can pick any color you want for the glow. Afterwards, I go through and I put a darker color on the very bottom portion of these lenses to sort of sell a reflection, and to complete the look, one final white highlight dot. Now I know what you're thinking, this model needs some drool. Well, a really easy and cheap effect is to just use hot glue. Everybody has a hot glue gun. If you don't, they're about $1 at the store, really easy to get. It's an easy material to work with. It's also not really permanent. You can peel this stuff off if you want. Just don't burn yourself. Be kind of careful, please. And again, if at any point this model makes you go, ew, gross, then I guess, yeah, I did a pretty good job. Now you know we need some Blood for the Blood God technical paint to really just, ugh, it's so gross, but it's perfect. It's the only technical paint I have. It's the absolute best for having blood effects on your miniatures. Moving on, a little bonus tutorial. If you take some shade paints and you put these big spots onto your miniature, and then you go back later on with a clean damp brush, you can pull that paint off and the outside ring of dried paint will leave these like spots on whatever surface you put it onto. It's a neat trick, I love using it. It's an easy way to just add some visual interest to a surface. Base time. This is really simple stuff. I'm just going to do a base coat of brown, and then we go over that with a lighter brown dry brush, and then we need some pigment powder. But I'm just going to use this dollar store makeup palette. If you can find one with some earth tones on it, it's actually a really easy way to get some very cheap pigment powders. That's really all it is. I use some light rusty color and some dark soil colors to mix and match some colors and get some visual interest on the brown base. And then I just go back in with a darker shade on the airbrush. It's completely optional. The tank is actually going to cover most of this, but I still felt like it needed a rich brown color to have some shadows in there. Then we're getting extremely close. Black around the rim of the base. And then one thing that I always do is I add a triangle of a color that matches whatever army I'm painting. Doesn't really mean anything, it's just my signature. And we are finally finished. Ladies and gentlemen, the Myphitic Blighthauler. I had an absolute blast modifying and painting and really just grinding away at this model. I hope that you all enjoyed. Thank you very much for coming along with me on this journey. It was a ton of work, but I feel like it's completely worth it. Please like and subscribe, comment if you think I've earned it. I'll see you on the next one.